Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Minton, and I'm the owner and CEO of Chief Executive Boards International. And I want to thank you for taking time to join us for today's webinar, which is Retain and Reward Top Executives. Before we get started, I thought I'd just take a few minutes here to just sort of brief you a little bit about our organization. Chief Executive Boards is headquartered in Greenville, South Carolina, with executive and peer advisory boards in multiple cities throughout the United States. And I'll be your host today, and I'd like to invite you to stay tuned for future events on our website located at the bottom of this slide, where you see the www.chiefexecutiveboards.com. So before we dive straight into our main topic, you might be curious to learn a little bit more about CEBI. And so essentially what we do, we're a boutique executive peer advisory service with local and national boards located throughout the eastern and midwestern United States. The purpose of Chief Executive Boards is really to help business owners, CEOs, and presidents to share ideas and experiences to avoid pitfalls and potholes that many have already experienced. Essentially what we do is we kind of help steer you from reinventing the wheel within your own business. It's really where highly successful chief executives go to become more successful. Our members convene in face-to-face forums, and they receive unvarnished advice in a confidential environment that's typically unavailable elsewhere. It's kind of like having your own personal think tank. And so, as an example, we really address what keeps you up at night, items that you just don't have the opportunity to discuss with anyone else. Our members can avail of local and national advisory board forums and attend educational summits, and they have access to other CEBI members, our libraries, our workshops, and also our webinars such as this one today. So before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. This webinar is going to last approximately 45 minutes, and you can post your questions in the question panel box on the right-hand side, which will be answered after the webinar session. As a reminder, the webinar is being recorded, and if you stay with us until the end, we'll advise you how you can access the recorded version. Our contact details will also be listed at the end of the presentation. And so with that, why don't we get started with today's webinar topic. Our guest presenters today, first of all, I'll start out with Rusty Cagle. Is also one of our members, but I'll let Rusty sort of fill you in on who he is. But also joining us today will be Bob Nienaber, and Rusty will also introduce him to you as well. So with that, we'll turn it over to Rusty. Rusty, are you there?
I am, Kevin. Thank you. I just want to tell everybody I'm honored to have an opportunity to speak with everyone today on a subject that constantly impacts privately and publicly held companies, retaining and rewarding top talent. And as Kevin mentioned, we do have Bob Nienaber, the CEO of Benefit RFP, co-hosting with me today. He has developed an amazing cloud technology that allows companies to analyze their current benefits and incentive plans and measure their effectiveness. We will have Bob head up the presentation here shortly. As Kevin mentioned, I am a CEBI member, and I find the information and the thought sharing invaluable to my personal and professional development. As you can see on my bio, I have a lot of designations, which means I can pass a lot of tests, and I have a lot of continuing education requirements on me. I am asked to speak on a number of different platforms, and one, the South Carolina Business Radio, that you may have heard me from time to time. And a lot of the key elements that we have in these discussions are usually around tax mitigation, wealth preservation, and asset protection. This has led me to work with a number of successful business owners and realizing that there's a big gap in aligning the company vision and goals with the key people who help produce those results. And that's where Bob and I have been partnering together and helping companies take a new perspective on analyzing their total benefit offerings and finding creative solutions to meet these needs. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bob, and he's going to go through a presentation, and he's joining us from always sunny California. So Bob, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you, Rusty. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. How are you? Thank you for joining the call, and we appreciate your time this morning. I'm going to dive right into really the mission behind whenever we work with executive benefits, whether it's for a small company just getting started, mid-sized company, or one of the large publicly traded companies. You're really on a mission to build or manage a culture that's effective in your individual organizations. Whenever you think of compensation, that's what gets everybody in the doors. And then when you think about executive benefits, that's really the cultural relationship that you're trying to put together to build things like loyalty, success, performance, all these things that are tied hand in hand. Obviously in our travels, we work very closely with the human resource departments as far as setting up these plans, designing plans, and one of the things that the HR directors and VPs constantly tell us is they've got enough on their plate. And when you look at this slide, you can see all the different things that folks are involved in. And we understand that. We've been working with the HR community for 25 years on all the different company sizes. And these days, with everything being kind of as tight as they are in business, you often have people that are doing multiple tasks for an organization. And what we really look for when we're going through and building these plans is we want to take a lot of the work that's associated with these programs off your backs. The last thing we want to do is add more to what you're doing on your day-to-day operations, because like I said, we know that you're busy. And so a lot of this stuff in the past 10 years has switched from where it was very manual to actually where it's technology driven. And so one person can manage multiple tasks on these programs for the company and for the company's success. We also know that the greatest HR organizational challenges are the things that keep everybody awake at night are how do we retain the people, how do we keep the productive people in their seats, how do we keep our competition from swiping these people away, and then how do we build for the future. Right now you hear all the time, you hear talk about the millennials, and if you have a good millennial or a good X-Gen or a good baby boomer, it's really the same conversation across the board is you really need to build a program that aligns their personal financial rewards with the goals and direction of the organization. And it can be a long-term goal, it can be a short-term. The big thing that we want to avoid are all these direct costs related to compensation and turnover costs. We know exit costs are expensive. We know that it's difficult to recruit because when you recruit, sometimes your culture can get out of line if you get the wrong people in, especially if you're talking about the C-suite folks. There's time involved with interviewing, hiring, training, lost productivity. And then the big thing that you always worry about is if you lose one of your C-suite folks, then you're going to be in trouble because generally speaking, if you have a good C-suite person in your midst, if they leave, if they get recruited away, they're usually not the only ones that are disappearing on you. They're usually taking some of the other top people. And so that's the big risk. I always tell companies, look, you're not really competing with the companies down the street for your top talent. You're competing with the folks that are in your office, because if we lose our good people, they're going to take all of our secrets, our top customers, all that kind of stuff with them. And so we really want to focus on how do we keep those people fully engaged with our projects and our company. You really, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to interject a quick question here, because these can be pretty significant costs to an organization with tight margins. In your experience, do you find these costs to be measured and acted upon in your experience?
Yeah, they track this stuff quite a bit. So when we work with all the different HR organizations and the CFO organizations and CEO organizations, they're always asking, what that measurement is. And the best way to understand it is if you have people on the lowest rungs of the HCE level, so people that are around $120,000 of income a year, it generally takes 2 times their income to replace that individual. If you have people that are in the mid-sector, Rusty, that are in the $300,000 and $400,000 ranges, it's generally going to take 3 to 4 times their annual income to replace those people. And if you have people over the $500,000, it's 5 to 7 times. And so it's a very significant cost to an organization. I'll tell you though, you look at that from a number standpoint, that's really not the big story. The bigger story is when you lose those senior executives, you lose that culture, and that can take years to repair or realign for your company. Just a quote out of the Harvard Business Review: why should I train people when my competitors are willing to do it for me? So there's people that actively are after your people, and we know this. And also, you run into competitive situations where maybe one organization is a private company, another company is a public company, and you say, well, I can't compete with the public companies. And really that's, maybe on the very high end, that might be a legitimate argument. But on companies doing up to $200 million of revenue, it's generally about a 2% increase in the public companies on the pay gap. Companies doing $200 million to $1 billion is about 14%. And so what most private companies will do is actually lock these good people into an executive benefit program or a couple of programs so that they don't have to compete necessarily on today's compensation, but they can better compete on the long-term benefits that a company offers. And everybody these days in the executive suites, they're really looking for a total rewards package. They want to know that if they put in 20, 30 years with a company, which is generally unheard of these days in the smaller sector, but in the larger sector, it's actually much more common. They want to make sure that if I'm going to be here 20, 25 years, not only am I going to be paid a fair wage today, but I'm going to have a package that's going to support me when I need to pay money for my kids' education, ultimately the retirement that I'm after, those types of things. And so that's really what you're putting the package together with. When we go through this, you'll see in a couple slides that we don't just look at a company benefit as being an equity or some type of cash payment to these people, but what we look at is once we've paid these individuals, is there a way to actually utilize tax law and ERISA regulations and DOL regulations to enable distributions to come out at a much reduced tax rate for the individuals, or even if we can eliminate some taxes, now we can do a nice job of improving the benefits, and the only way they can get those benefits is being tied to the company. But we can improve it without going back to the company and simply asking for more and more money out of the company's coffers to make these benefits take place. One of the groups we work with is a group called World at Work. Each year we do several Fortune 1000 programs. And when we started this a couple years ago, and they're generally attended by about 98% of all the Fortune 1000 companies, so they're very well attended. And one of the surveys that we took everybody through was, okay, you folks that are dealing specifically with executive benefits, what percentage of you feel that you're 100% competent on all the different programs that are out there? And 3% of the respondents on the call felt they were 100% competent with everything. 58% felt they were about 70% there, and then 39% felt that they were about 50% there. Why this is important is if the folks that are building the executive benefit plans have confusion, then the participants aren't getting as much out of a plan, and a bad plan is in some cases as bad or worse than not having any plan at all. And so what we've done is rather than have a lot of confusion out in the marketplace with all these different things, is we use technology now to really simplify the whole program. And obviously what you're after utilizing these technologies is to get the most out of your recruiting, retaining, rewarding of your key folks, and driving the culture that you're after. The definition of a highly compensated or a highly valued employee varies from company to company. And if I'm sitting on a board of a Fortune 500 company and we're having this discussion, it's going to be a very different discussion than if I'm sitting in a company doing $100 million of revenue having the same discussion. And so really what you want to think about is, as you're determining who should be eligible in one of these plans, what would happen to your company if a particular individual or a group of individuals were to leave? And so those are the folks that you really want to lock in with an executive benefit strategy. It doesn't have to be defined purely by income or position. We have, I'm out in California, we have a lot of biotech firms and .com organizations out here, and they have a lot of technology people that might be earning $120,000 where everybody else on the high end is earning $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. If the company's going to be hurt by that technology person leaving, that's somebody that we want to lock into a plan. So these can vary across the board on any of these things. At the end of the day, where the confusion comes in on these executive benefit plans is they're very different than the plans that we all grew up with, the qualified plans. Even though these predate qualified plans by about 40 years, there's a lot of things that go into them. They might be equity derived, it might be a phantom plan, it might be some type of cash or long-term incentive comp, and at the end of the day, what we do with our technology is we simply go through and analyze what plans are going to be the most efficient and most effective for the company to achieve the company goals. Then as it transfers out to the participant, and this is where most plans fall down and miss the target, corporate tax rules and timing rules are very different than what individuals have. And if I give an executive $1 million in stock or $100,000 in a cash bonus, and they take that money out during their highest income earning years, it's really not going to benefit them as much as it could if I was to enable them to put that into a plan that protected them from taxes at the time that the money's put into the program, and then they can take it out based on their individual goals, individual financial timing, all that kind of stuff. Because at the end of the day, there's never going to be an executive that's going to complain about receiving a benefit, but most people on this call have probably heard folks saying, well, I got this benefit, half of it to taxes. Was there a way I could have avoided that? And so that's what we're talking about, is really how to improve their individual distributions by using the rules that have been around for years and years. We also look at these plans. If you're a regional company or a national company, a lot of times you'll have state taxes that will impose different rates for your participants. And so if I'm in a company that's all over the country, the folks in California have the highest state tax rates, and then if I compare it to maybe Texas or Nevada or Florida where they don't have the state tax rate, if I want to make their tax rate the same in Nevada, Texas, and Florida for the California participants, I can do that utilizing these plans, and we'll show you how you can actually set it up so they're not paying state taxes today, and also how they can take that money out state tax-free upon retirement, because it can be significant. Most executives in these plans will have dollars of total savings in a plan by the time they reach their retirement period, and we want to encourage that. Pre-tax is the number one way to get the most out of your money outside of tax-free, and since tax-free is almost an impossibility these days, we encourage the participants to put as much money into, whether it's a qualified plan, a non-qualified plan, a deferred long-term incentive comp payout, whatever it is, to get the pre-tax benefits. But then before taking the money out of those pre-tax benefits as a distribution, which is probably the worst effect on your money because it's going to have the highest taxes, we want them to reestablish how that money is going to come out to them so that we can eliminate all or most of the tax impacts for these individuals. The number one thing that companies cite on building these plans where they end up with a bad plan or something that's just not effective for their program is agent risk. These are very technical programs. We work with the risk attorneys on a regular basis. We have a team of folks that are out in the field that are very sophisticated in these rules, because you're using investment rules, you're using ERISA, you're using DOL, you're using the IRS. All these different things come into play on these conversations. And if an agent is only partially aware of how these programs work, they can really hurt you. And so the number one thing cited by companies having a bad plan is an agent risk. So really make sure that you're teamed up with some good folks. The number one cited problem that executives run into is tax risk. And if you take $1, and you've all probably seen this, if you take $1 and you double it every year for 20 years, you're going to have $1 million if you don't have taxes associated with it. You plug in a 40% tax bracket to that, the end result is quite staggering when you look at the $12,000. You'll get to the $1 million. It's just going to take you another couple of decades to get there. And so tax risk is a piece that we want to control. If we can save a client 30% on the taxes at distribution, that's the same as getting a 30% return on your investments compounded each year. And it also means you can take less market risk when you're controlling the taxes. You don't have to be so aggressive to get to your financial results. And then, of course, you're after the net result of having the preferred taxes taken care of and having the distributions from that point on being eligible away from the tax band. We got somebody talking in the background. If you could put your phone on mute, that'd be real helpful. Thank you. You know, so the three phases that we're after. When you're deferring the money, or your participants are deferring the money, utilize every pre-tax rule you can. Reposition this money before you take money out for your kids' education or retirement 3 or 4 years prior to the event, and then take your maximized net distributions outside of the tax world. The big factors that you run into from a company standpoint, this usually leads into some recruiting problems. If a plan is top-heavy, if you don't have enough people that are earning the average wages in the company, not contributing to a plan, it reduces eligible compensation into things like qualified plans, and you'll all have heard about you know, the top folks receiving a distribution or receiving a match from a company, only to have that taken away and taxed because the plan was top-heavy. And so we can eliminate these things from happening. We also will increase the qualified plan participation significantly because you'll no longer have the taxing issues of the undervalued qualified plans. And it gives these executives an opportunity, when you set these plans up properly, to now have a program where they can actually get more out of it, get away from the tax ban, all that kind of stuff.
Hey, Bob, with this slide here, you know, I know a lot of us have heard with companies, you know, addressing the old three-legged stool where you've got Social Security, you've got a pension, and you got a 401k that can make up a 70 to 80% replacement of income. And in today's environment, we don't see pensions being offered as much. And so without some type of benefit plan for deferral, how do highly compensated executives get there with, you know, the after tax being so punitive and then not having these type of plans? I mean, it becomes a real challenge, right?
You know, it does. It's all about timing. You know, of course, we'll get those calls from the executive that has just retired and said, okay, what's my best steps here? Well, the best steps were 3 or 4 years ago to get everything aligned. And you know, depending on how your benefits are set up, if I'm an executive and let's say I have I'm just going to throw some numbers out. I have $100,000 of cash bonus. I receive $100,000 in some type of RSU or equity position with the company that's going to vest in 3 or 5 years, that type of thing. And I'm getting close to my retirement period. What I want to do is make sure that on those stock positions, when they vest, I don't want to pay taxes, so I want them to be held by the company until I'm ready to take that money out. And depending on the situation with the individual, if they're in their 60s and getting ready to go out the door, we might address the qualified plan first. If we utilize, on this slide you see the DOL 92.6, if we utilize that rule, and that rule has been around since the 1970s, if we utilize that, people that have over $750,000 to $1 million in any qualified plan, in a corporate plan, we can actually adjust that so 100% of that money comes out tax-free. And people don't realize that. And this is not an opinion letter or anything from an attorney. These are real steadfast programs that have existed forever. And so we don't hear about this until we've gotten to that point where we earn a lot of money, so some people miss out on that. So just remember, if you have a lot of money in a qualified plan, if you're in an ESOP and you're one of the shareholders and you have more than $1 million, you need to look at this, because rather than paying out that $500,000 in taxes, we can recapture that all for you so that it goes to yourself or to your next generation, that type of thing. The other thing that happens, especially here in California, when they implemented the emergency tax rate on the higher income earners to the 13.3%, that was quite steep, and a lot of folks that were able to move out of the state did, but most folks can't. And so what you can do is whatever amounts of money you want to pay taxes on. In other words, if I'm making $500,000 today and I need $300,000 to live off of, I'm going to defer $200,000. And if I do it for 5 or 10 years, with my gains, there's probably going to be a couple $1,000,000 in there when I retire. I could take up residency in a different state and take the distributions out of that state. And as you can imagine, for every $1,000,000 of distribution, I'm going to save $130,000. So the source tax rule, is a great rule. That's been around. Clinton actually put that in when he was in office 20 years ago. You also look at how can I affect today's taxes. The last thing I want to do is if I'm in my peak earning years and I don't need the money today, I want to put it into a program that really mitigates my personal taxes today and then take it down the road so that I can effectively reduce or eliminate my affordable care tax, those types of things. So there's a lot of tax savings that you can put into these programs. California's highest tax rate is 66% all in. And, if you can get that down to 30% from the high-end folks or eliminate some of the taxes, that's a significant conversation. And you see that happen in a lot of places around the country. Whenever you're dealing with a non-qualified plan, an equity plan, or a qualified plan like a 401k, just remember you can run all these plans simultaneously. And there's a lot of confusion around that. A lot of people think, well, I have a qualified plan, so I can't do one of these other plans. Actually, you can. You see companies that have multiple plans. And what you can do is if I have, let's say I have 100 employees and I have 10 highly compensated folks, I can actually make those highly compensated folks ineligible for the qualified plan. Now I no longer have any type of testing concerns. I don't have to put in a safe harbor plan at my company or anything like that. And I can exactly mirror the 401k for the top hat folks, and I can effectively just allow them to utilize that plan. The other thing I can do is I can set up one of these plans for the top hat folks. I can do a deferral plan. I can do a defined benefit plan. In the non-qualified world, we still see a lot of defined benefit programs that are out there for specific executives. I can merge any values into a plan, because if I have a phantom plan, it's a company liability. If I merge that plan into a 409A program, I still have the same liability, but now I can control events like distribution for the participants. So at the end of the day, it doesn't cost the company anything. In fact, it improves their P&L and cash flow situation. But as you can, as you can guess, it really dramatically improves the position for the executive. Same thing with long-term incentive comp plans. If I have a 3-year rolling vest in an LTIP plan, which is the most common deferral period on those, my participant, if they're 45 years old and their kids are in college, they might not want to take that money out just to pay a bunch of taxes. They might want to use it for other things down the road. And so you can really sit down with the individuals and come up with a very effective program. The way our doors open, and Rusty mentioned that we're the country's only cloud-based executive benefit organization in the country, and so we make it very simple. We give you a diagnostic summary piece. You go on there, you answer about a dozen questions, and then we take you through the live version of the diagnostic, and at the end of that call, you'll receive a summary. And it'll tell you exactly, based on your highly compensated participants, how your plan is doing well. Most of your competitive companies will either see a 20 to 25% deferral eligibility, whether it's equity cash, equity derivative, that type of thing. And most folks that come through the diagnostic initially, the top group for the HCEs, so your highest HCEs, your most important people in most cases, are averaging 2.7% deferral capabilities from all of their compensation. So they are getting hammered by taxes. The next group averages about 5.4%, and then the lower group is actually able to put in about 15 to 18% of their income in a pre-tax basis. So the lower group is generally okay, but we're doing reverse discrimination against the main people running the companies, and those are the main people we're trying to hang on to. And so that's what we can really correct with this. Once you have an understanding that you're not competing with the company down the street, but you're competing to keep the people that you already have in their seats in their place, by opening up these avenues doesn't cost the company anything, but it significantly helps out these participants. And we take that summarization report and we break it down into a very easy to read diagnostic recommendation summary so that you can see how to improve your program and how to get the most out of it for the company. Upon those recommendations, we run another summary result after that so that you can see just what areas it effectively improves. And then you can make the decisions from a very factual standpoint instead of emotional standpoint. Once we have that information in the diagnostic, depending on what plan or plans the company needs, we put together all the plan data, get everything filed with the DOL and all the necessary governmental agencies. We have a funding discussion. Companies don't realize that when you set up an executive benefit program properly, and this is large companies and small companies, and I'll be questioned on this probably after the call because it'll be a surprise to a lot of folks. When you set up the proper funding program using the tax programs that are available, a benefit plan will actually make the company a profit from the plan itself. Not counting the results of, now we've got the people locked in that are doing a great job, so they're driving the company in the right way. I'm talking about the actual plan financials. They'll make a significant profit for the company. So you want to have that discussion on how to really put the right funding together for your organization. Our benefit matrix shops every single financial vehicle that exists in America. And so when you look at that report, you're generally going to see the top 3 ways to fund your program. We're agnostic to whatever company you use. It doesn't matter to us. And at the end of the day, you're going to pick from a position of fact to get the most out of it for the company. What this means to the participant is if my plan is making $500,000, $1 million on an annual basis because of tax effects, I can actually take and share those values with my senior executives so that they have a match in a plan or some type of discretionary performance bonus into the plan without the company have to take more money out of their hard dollars. Then at the end of the day, we tie all the participants together with what's called a benefit concierge. And the benefit concierge takes a look at every single one of your senior executives, gives them a live report so they can look at it and say, okay, I'm 45 years old. When I retire at age 65, my $225,000 income today is going to equate to a $406,000 ending salary. And if I'm going to plan on being alive for 20 years, my target number is $3.2 million. I can then go down and look at and put in whatever information I've already saved so I can see what my difference is and I can see exactly what I need to set aside on an annual basis. And it does the same thing for other benefits in the organization. This is just cash, equity, 401ks, deferral programs, whatever you have. And then the next level is it looks at life insurance. Participants are wondering how much life insurance they have. They can plug in whatever they have currently through the company, through the group programs, what they have outside, and they can look at if they have a shortfall or if they're okay. And then the last piece that a lot of people really miss out on is a disability program. If a company doesn't have a disability program in place today, we always encourage a company, if they don't want to pay for it, that's fine. Do a voluntary plan because it costs nothing from the company. These are all turnkey these days. And so if I have 10 people, I want to offer it because it's another benefit. I don't necessarily have to pay for it unless the company wants to. But at the end of the day, the highest risk for disabilities is not the younger guys, but it's the people that are between 50 and 59 because of medical things like strokes, heart attacks, that type of thing. And so you really want to have a program in play because if somebody does become disabled, all of the stuff that they've been saving for their future is going to get wiped out, and it's going to be penalized when they take it out. So it really produces some significant tragedies, and we've seen that over the years where people, had issues. And so you want to look at everything, but at the end of the day, when we're done with all of our corporate programs around the country, we never want a participant to come back and say, well, we don't know how much we need to have set aside. We want people to know exactly what they need to have set aside because in order to achieve the goal, your first step obviously is to make the goal and make sure everybody knows what they're after. And so just to summarize, to keep everything simple, everything goes into the diagnostic, tells us exactly what plans work best for the company. We judge everything through the plan design for all the efficiencies to match the census that the company's looking at for eligibility. Do the financial modeling to get the most out of the money that the company's putting into a plan, and then make sure that it's tied to the participants in a total reward standpoint so that they understand this is a corporate benefit. This isn't something they're going to get as an individual. And then at the end of the day, most companies are surprised that they don't have to pay more money into the program to improve the benefit for the executives. You know, they simply have to utilize the plans properly to get the most out of them. And it's a much better conversation when you're dealing with the boards and dealing with the owners of these companies when everybody's on the same track and hitting on all cylinders. Obviously, the company's much more successful for that standpoint. And with that, Rusty, I'll turn it back over to you for any questions, any ideas that people have.
All right, thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. That's pretty thorough. And I, again, just kind of wrapping up here, and we'll turn it over to Robin to see if there's questions. You know, this is, you know, whether it's public companies or private companies, just, you know, I think the slide that shows all the different things that the HR group deals with, and then you look at the executives and how those are aligned. This has been very refreshing to the companies to be able to say, look, this gives us a way that now we can analyze it. We can really figure out what's an effective plan, what is not an effective plan. So I've had a lot of success with just being able to have this diagnostic, and companies realize they are on the right track, or maybe they need to make some improvements. So I appreciate you taking time and going through this. And with Kevin and Robin, I'll turn it over to you guys to see if there's questions, and we can wrap up with information. If somebody wants to find out more, we've got contact information on the slides also, I believe.
Sure, Rusty. Thank you so much, and thank you, Bob. We do have a few questions. The first one I have is from Lee, and his question is it true that I can discriminate and create different plans for key executives if necessary?
Great question, Lee. Yes. So when you have a non-qualified plan, the reason you have the flexibility for eligibility, as long as they meet the initial requirements of being a top hat individual, and there's 4 factors on determining that. You know, obviously, if they're over $120,000, you can put them into the plan. If they're in a position of ownership, or they control documents, that type of thing, they can be in a plan. If your participants are not over the $120,000, but they're earning 2 times the average wage earner's income, they can be in a plan. And so now you run into, okay, I've got different folks. I have different folks that are in the plan, or that I'm thinking about putting into the plan. How do I tier this program? And so we see most plans these days on larger companies where you have your C-suite folks are bonused on performance of the overall success of the company. Sales reps that are maybe bonused or commissioned off of individual performance with sales or sales goals that you have, or maybe you have an FDA type of organization where you don't want to bonus anybody out until a drug gets approved, so it hits the market, so the company has the money to pay these programs. But in all cases, you could have 100 people in a company that are participants in these, and you could have 100 different directions under one plan. And but generally you might see 2 or 3 different tiers based on whatever your individual goals are. The other thing from a recruiting standpoint, where we see this a lot, is if I'm bringing somebody over from another company and they have a plan like this, or they need a lot of money and I don't have the cash flow because I'm a growing company and I want to put something together, you can utilize these plans specific to that individual so that you can recruit that person and maybe put a 5-year vesting period in, so that you get a chance to see how they perform. And if they do everything right, then you'll pay them, but you won't pay them today. You'll pay them as you go. And so it gives you a chance as a company to make sure that participant that you brought on performs as well as they said they were. We've all heard the horror stories that, I paid this guy $500,000. He said he was going to do X. He didn't do it, but I've already paid him, so I'm stuck. And that's what you want to avoid. So tiering is absolutely commonplace in these programs. You have every capability you need to tie it into whatever performance options that you're looking at.
Great. Thank you, Bob. And the last question we have is from Paul. And he asked, can I tie vesting schedules to matches and incentives that I contribute to the company?
Yes, and make sure I have clarity around this. Anything that a participant defers is 100% vested right away. So, and how you structure that plan, You know, if I'm deferring $100,000 or $10,000 or whatever into the plan each year, and at the end of the day, I quit, so I have a separation of service from the company. The company can set up the plan that says, okay, when you leave, regardless of how long you've been here, you're taking all your money at once, or a company may put together a de minimis account that says, you know, for somebody that quits after they've been here 20 years, we don't want to just force them to take $1 million because they've been loyal, it just didn't work out in the long haul, that type of thing. You can set up a de minimis program that says anything less than $50,000 is going to get paid out today. Anything more will come out of your distribution the way you originally elected. And that's how most participants really like that. And then dependent on your vesting schedule, and just kind of like Lee's question a second ago, I can set up vesting schedules to be the same for everybody in the plan, or I might set up the vesting schedules to be different for the different tiers. We have a lot of plans where they don't want it to be a takeaway from executives that have already been there for 20 years. And so when we put in a plan in their late stages, all those people that have been there for years, we'll make them 100% vested usually for any company contributions because they've already proven out their loyalties. But now you have the new guys coming in, especially when you get into young age companies like the millennials, that type of thing. You certainly want to put some kind of vesting schedule in for them. And generally speaking, 86% of the companies use a 3-year vesting period for all benefits, whether it's equity or cash. And then the next largest tier is 4 years and then 5 years. So it's very, very common. We encourage it because, you know, we always look at it from the company's putting together and sponsoring this thing. And so it has to drive the company results. That's only fair. But at the same time, we also want to reward the people that really come in. So if I hire 10 guys and I put 10 guys into the plan, and, you know, let's say Jimmy does a great job, Susie does a great job, Tony doesn't perform, I want to be able to protect the interests of the company, while at the same time, I want to be able to reward those 2 that did a great job. And so you can really design that based on what you're seeing, either from a turnover standpoint, what your goals are on a project, you know, anything that you want to on that.
All right, thank you so much, Bob. And at this point, I will turn the webinar back over to you, Kevin.
Okay. Well, thank you, Robin. And I want to thank everyone for participating today, all of our participants. I do want to remind you that this webinar is being recorded and will be sent in the form of a web link via email. If you'd like some more information, either about Chief Executive Boards or about the presentation information that you have heard, please feel free to contact either of these numbers here or the email addresses that you see, and we'll be happy to help you and serve you however we can. Again, I'd like to thank our presenters today, Rusty Cagle and Bob Nienaber. And I hope that you've found this presentation to be helpful to you. I want to invite you to join us for future events, and you know, we look forward to future speaking engagements and speaking with you and regarding future engagements. And want to wish all of you a great week ahead. So this concludes our presentation, and I want to thank you and farewell.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Robin.